at Whitehall that would do that for you, just like a truck stop. Any place that there were things that were happening, dry docks, you've got one in town. There was an infrastructure to support the activity of literally hundreds and hundreds of boats working every year through your system. Now, I've often titled this picture "The Villains," because it's the transportation technology of railroads that really take this extraordinary positive growth, innovative, millionaires are being made story and terrify it. Because the railroads were really good at what they did. They could do it 12 months of the year, and the canal couldn't. And they could, especially when it came time to moving passengers, they could do it, weather didn't matter, forecast didn't matter, winter didn't matter. And so the packet boats I just introduced were literally made extinct by the coming of the railroads. And so they were really, one of the great things I think for students, young students or college, whatever, any student, is through these waterways and through these evolutions, we get to study the evolution of technology, in this case transportation technology, right up until our time, because the canal is still vibrant, alive, and operating. So by the turn of the 20th century, there was some concern about the viability of this canal. The railroads were just, expanding, and they had huge capital. And so Theodore Roosevelt championed, well, look, we don't want just to have the railroads tell us what to do. We got to have some checks and balances here. Let's build a larger canal, and let's give them some competition so they each stay honest. And so in the early part of the 20th century, a thing called the barge canal was open, dedicated and open. And that's the system still in operation today. The system that is operated and maintained by the Canal Corporation so expertly is over 100 years old. It's an extraordinary skill set that has to come along with that to make that actually work. The floating plants to keep the depths, the dredging and so on, it's a remarkable system. I encourage you all to spend as much time as you can with it. And of course, at the same time that the canal was expanded into the barge canal and the locks were greatly expanded into the locks you see today, a class of boat was built to take advantage of that. There's only one in existence today, the Day Peckinpah, and we're fighting very hard so that it lasts the next 100 years. And this is a great example of the legacy of New York State canals. This town, Weedsport, Jordan, all the towns in our area make the case that when you build a system like this and it's enlarged and a different corridor gets developed, it has by definition left behind an extraordinary legacy of archaeology, engineering, recreation, subject for artwork and study. And this is one of the most dramatic legacies of the entire canal system, and it's in your community. You should be, really proud of that, but it turns out you've got them everywhere. Everywhere. The area is littered with great archaeological sites. Sites that should excite the imagination of a kid, challenge them to draw it as it was, put some horses on it, put some people on it. What was their lives like? This is just, to me, an extraordinary body of information to take advantage Some of the things that are legacies you don't get to see, and that's where my discussion of nautical archaeology comes in. This boat and 4 others were invisible just before they started pumping down this Superfund site. This is the Burlington, Vermont Barge Canal. It's a barge canal. There were 5 barges abandoned in the barge canal, and we couldn't see them. I found them as a nautical archaeologist, and we had to manage them. Finding them was not easy, but it was relatively easy. Now we had to manage it. And this is where I can tell you, I'm going to give you 2 big definitions of shipwrecks. There's the abandoned shipwreck, which is what you're looking at. And this is, can you tell by the shape of this boat what it did? It was a canal boat. It was a canal boat. It was designed to fit the locks, long and narrow. We can tell when it was, when it was in operation based on 2 measurements, the length and the beam. I usually do that. I go underwater and make 2 measurements. Oh, it's an 1862 class enlarged boat. This one is a 97-footer abandoned in place, which means it has limited archaeological potential. Can the hull be studied? Absolutely. Will there be artifacts aboard that these guys left on? Absolutely. But will it be as rich as a true shipwreck, an archaeological example of a boat that sank in unplanned circumstances? Not close. This is a real boat. It's a painting of a boat that sank in 1825, the year that the Erie Canal opened. This experimental boat, this early sailing canal boat, was sailing from Port Henry to Westport, New York, with a load of iron ore and 5 young men and boys operating the boat. In a November gale, it got overwhelmed and it sank. And it looks just like that on the bottom of Lake Champlain. This boat has everything aboard that made it a working watercraft that people lived aboard. So all the artifacts, all the working elements, the anchor, the rudder, the masts are all present. So if I'm an archaeologist, what has the higher archaeological potential? Of course, the true shipwrecks. And as I said earlier, finding the shipwrecks is easy, managing the shipwrecks is hard. And this particular boat was in Lake Erie, out of the city of Dunkirk, New York, on New York waters, and became the subject of a very complicated lawsuit. Every shipwreck also tells a story, every single one of them. We might not know it, we might not be able to get at it, but a lot of shipwrecks come with a name, with a little research. This was the General Butler, built in 1862, named for the Civil War general, who for about a week was a hero before he became a total scoundrel. So they named the boat after him. He had a good week. And so they named the boat after him. But when we found the boat and realized we had a canal boat loaded with Isle of Man marble blocks going from a quarry to a manufacturing plant, we had a canal boat. But we had a canal boat with masts, stubs of masts, a centerboard, dead-eye rigging elements. Did canal boats sail? Well, it turns out that this boat, the discovery of this boat allowed us to rediscover the fact that there was a class of sailing canal boats on Lake Champlain, and it just opened up a whole new door for us. Okay, finding the boat's easy. If it's a public resource, who gets to see it? So on Lake Champlain, we created the nation's first underwater historic preserve program, selecting 10 sites for public access for divers. And all we asked of them, we provided moorings so they didn't have to drop anchors on these fragile wooden ships. And we asked them to treat it with respect like it was a museum anywhere else. Zero impact. It's been an amazingly successful program. But not everybody dives. In fact, most people don't. So we wanted to also make connection. If it's a public resource, the public has to be able to know about it, learn from it, enjoy it, value it. And so we created full-size working replicas of 4 boats in my career. This was the last one that I superintended. This is the General Butler, the boat you saw earlier, the 1862 class canal boat. 88 feet long, 14 and a half feet wide, designed to sail. We had spent 10 years underwater, thousands of hours, measuring everything. We had back engineered a set of plans. When we went to build it, we built their boat. We didn't want a better boat. We wanted their boat. You build their boat, you can evaluate it. And so that's what we did. We built it over 4 years. We launched it in Burlington, Vermont Harbor with 10,000 people watching. Fortunately, I brought in this excavator in case we got stuck and we needed it, so it didn't look like we got stuck. And then we had taken some, the first year, 2004, after we launched it, we did sea trials. And one of the things I realized is we took this old image of a sailing canal boat on Lake Champlain, the old timer on Lake Champlain, and we recreated the image. And so we then, learning how to work with the boat, wanted to use it as a historic icon and delivery system. So we started recreating known trips that these boats would have taken. And so what we learned is that the very first boat to go through the Champlain Canal, when it opened in 1823, was a boat called the Gleaner of St. Albans, and it was an experimental boat because it was a sailing canal boat. And we know that because every place it went, they held a party for it. They shot off cannon, they got everybody eating and drinking. It was, for them, it was as impactful in their society as the internet is in ours. And they knew it. And so they wined and dined these people all the way down to New York City. And then they held them a banquet. Because they knew that the world would never be the same. Now they had water conduits to marketplaces and resources that heretofore had not been available to them. And so we've used this boat for education and outreach. We've happily traveled the canal system with the support of the Canal Corporation for dozens of years. We've raised the rig and sailed it on Cayuga Lake. And what we're doing, of course, the boat, its job today isn't to carry heavy stuff. Its job is to bring people aboard and excite them about learning about canals and shipwrecks. And nothing I have been involved with in my career has done it better than this boat. In the 14 years that I operated this program, we put over 300,000 people, little people and grandparents, over that period of time. And every one of them walked on board that boat and their eyes lit up, and all they wanted to do was know everything about it. It was like, thinking to myself, as a teacher, you want to engage, you want to get their interest. The boat did it. It was magic. And if all goes well, this boat will be coming to Port Byron. And so we're working on that right now. And you can thank Craig and Dan for that, and a lot of other people in the room too. So now there was something about Seneca Lake, so let me start talking about Seneca Lake. And it's related to the Lois McClure program, because in 2018, the Corning Museum of Glass was about to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Brooklyn Flint Glass Works moving lock, stock, and barrel to Corning. They were picking up their business and completely transforming it to Corning, New York. And they did it all on the water with canal boats. And so they asked us to partner with them, and the Corning Museum of Glass built this glass barge for public presentations. And here's our Lois McClure. We're sitting in Brooklyn 5 years ago this week, getting ready to spend 5 months on the waterways interpreting this story. It was the most glorious maritime experience I've ever had. And so here we are getting ready to go, and I was asked to encapsulate the history and write up a booklet about it. So I've been studying for a year the elements of that journey, the elements of what would have been there. Some of the canals that were operating then are no longer operating. So figuring all that out, I could get up the Hudson, out the Erie Canal, onto the Cayuga and Seneca Canal, onto Seneca Lake, come down south out of Seneca Lake, get on the Chemung Canal, which is no longer operational, take the Chemung feeder, and I could land my canal boat in Corning and unload all my glasswork stuff. That's how they did it. And the more I studied that, the more I became aware that, Seneca Lake feels a lot like Lake Champlain. Glacial lake, long and narrow. They're 35 miles long. Lake Champlain was 120 miles of navigation long. Lake Champlain is 450 feet deep. Seneca Lake is 600 plus feet deep. Wow, look at the images and the photographs and the records that tell me that out of Geneva and Watkins Glen and lots of ports in between, this was a working body of water. There were canal boats, hundreds of them in a season, traveling up and down Seneca Lake. And what I know from my experience is, if you have a heavily loaded boat in tow, and it gets out on a body of water and the wind starts to blow and there's not a lot of places to hide, you can have catastrophe. And that's what a shipwreck is in their time. And so I never want to lose sight of the fact that the boats that we find, and I rejoice over the ones we find that are true shipwrecks, full of stuff, the plates, dishes, and toys of the kids. That's exciting to me. It's informative to me. And I'm celebrating their worst day. And I want to be very careful about keeping that perspective intact. I also realized by my study that we knew almost nothing about Chemung canal boats. They had not been widely studied. There was not a lot of record involved. And so I'm sitting there going, well, we're going to do this 5-month trip. Why wouldn't we think about, with the bicentennial right over the horizon, why wouldn't we think about doing a demonstration survey and seeing if we can find some shipwrecks here? They should be here. There should be a collection here. How big a collection, I don't know, but the more I learn, the more I think it should be a substantial collection. So we've got a permit from the New York State Museum. We've got support from the Canal Corporation, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the New York Department of Environmental Conservation, and many others. And we went out and we started surveying. And in the first year, 2018, we recruited some excellent surveyors from just in this part of the world using side scan sonar. We were out there for a week. We found our first shipwreck in the first 15 minutes. And then we found 6 more. And a sonar image of a canal boat shipwreck can look something like that. And this is what it looks like when you send a camera down to take an image. This is a bow of an early Erie canal boat, completely intact, 3-dimensional, not a fraction. It's a completely intact canal boat. This is the stern of the boat, and the really negative thing that you're seeing is the quagga mussels that are encrusting these boats. These are a relatively new invasive species, and they're going to destroy these boats over time. So frankly, us getting to find them and document them as well as we can now is a really good thing. So with the success of that first season, 2018, we came out in 2019 with a more sophisticated research vessel that we partnered with Middlebury College in bringing out here. And this boat had a multi-beam sonar. So you've seen charts of Seneca Lake, right? The NOAA charts of Seneca Lake. Those were made with a lead line, dropping a line with a lead weight on it, measuring when it hit the bottom, putting the measurement down. So that was 145 feet in this triangulated location. And that's how they made these first charts. And they're using data from 1870s. We, on the other hand, began using side scan and multi-beam sonar, where you got 512 beams out of a multi-beam in split fractions of a second. Our geologist just did a calculation of how many data points our survey has collected, and it's 2.3 billion points. Highly accurate maps will come out of this. We have now imaged the entire bottom of Seneca Lake from 30 feet and deeper. The multi-beam doesn't work really well in shallow water. Along the way, we found a pile of boats. We've looked at a pile of them, and this is just typical. This is target 16. You see the bow is intact. You see the horse stable right behind it, completely intact. You see the stern, the tiller bar, everything is intact. This is the bilge pump. If you were taking on water, you'd have somebody go out on the deck and pump it out. And it's an amazing record of archaeologically rich sites that we're going to get to study. But if you'd asked me in 2018, as I was trying to get this survey up and running, if you had one boat you could find, what would it be? And Noah's Ark isn't one of them. So you gotta, I said, okay, if I had one boat that I could find, I'd like to find, please, one packet boat. Because those packet boats, which we've spoken about, the Greyhound buses, we had no archaeological known example. So it was the coveted, everything we looked at, oh, could that be a packet? No, it looks like a freight boat. It's on the camera. Oh yeah, very nice freight boat, got its cargo, it's got coal on it, and that's just the way it is. But a packet boat, finding one would be great. And packet boats were very different than freight boats. These were beehives of human activity. Here in the men's cabin, the ladies' cabin behind, these guys, it's just turned nightfall and they're taking their numbers to find their bunks. You could sleep on a packet boat. They had a big cooking area in the stern, like a restaurant. So you could feed those 60, 70, 80 people. They had a bar on a packet boat. And so these boats were really set up and worked really well for the time they were there. And when we found this target number 7, it looks like the dimensions are canal dimensions, but the bow is sharper. Seam. You know, you can't really fully judge from a sonar image what you got. But you're always looking for clues, and because you want to find a particular boat, you try to make it look like that. So we had hoped that would be. We sent one of our cameras down, this is very deep water, and it came back with images, and we did these sketches. It didn't look like a freight boat. We weren't ready to declare it as something else, but it had elements that were not typical to what we were seeing in freight boats. So we went back in 2021 and put a much more sophisticated camera on it, which has been able to do 3D imagery, and I'm proud to tell you we have found a packet boat. It's got a different shape. The long and narrow is the same to fit through the locks, but the hull is shallow. It's fast. It's designed for speed, not hauling 100 tons of weight. Its form followed its function. It's terrific. The ladies' cabin separated by the men's cabin, and then in the back area is the galley. And the galley was huge, not for a family. And in that galley are plates, dishes, silverware, bowls, pots. It is a time capsule for what a packet boat life would have been like. So this year we went back with the same Middlebury College research boat. We needed to finish the multi-beam sonar. So that's what we did. We went out and said, you know, we've got 30 days, which is twice as many as we normally would invest in being there. We're going to bring our boat out there and we're going to try to finish the entire lake from 30 feet down. We need to get all those data points for the geological survey. This is the multi-beam transducer getting put into the water. This is Tom Manley, our geologist, and Erin, his graduate student from Middlebury College. And we just divide up the lake. It's all very precise. We know exactly where we've been. We know exactly where we haven't been. And every time we're actually surveying and the data is coming in, we've got 2 people watching the data, making notes in our logs about targets, issues, questions. We need to go back there, we've got a gap, etc. And the geology is spectacular. And the way I'll describe it to you is, you've all seen this new telescope that's been sending back all these great images from space. I think it's the Webb telescope. Yeah. And so those things in space were always there, but we couldn't see them because we didn't have the right tool. The same thing has just happened in Seneca Lake. We're now seeing where there were underwater landslides. I've been told by the New York State DEC geologist that this landslide represents 1 million tons of sediment moving from high ground down into the depth, and probably created by earthquakes. This is all new data for researchers to study and to predict future elements. And then we've also found this feature that we call pockmarks, because this is something we'd also found in Lake Champlain. And this is also under active study to understand how it was created and what it's actually doing down there. And the nautical archaeology from last season, off the charts. We covered a lot of territory. We covered 60% of Seneca Lake last season, and we were not disappointed in the number of canal boats and other shipwrecks that appeared on our sonar. And so this is, now you're getting a trained eye, you can tell this is a canal boat. Long and narrow, the bluff bow, the hatches. Not a lot of detail, but you can still tell that that's what it is. This is a little rougher, but this is also a canal boat. This is a canal boat. So I can tell you right now, we found last year between 25 and 50 new shipwrecks. We did not have time or budget to verify them yet, to put a camera down. That we hope to do this year. And actually, the boat I'm most excited about is this one. And you might say, well, why? You know, it's tiny. Well, it's tiny because it's in 600 feet of water. So the scale is different. But what's really exciting about this is not this boat, it's the other 4 that go with it. I believe this boat will be one of 4 canal boat shipwrecks made from the same wrecking event, the same storm. And the boats will help tell us that, as will our research.